thanks for coming. It's really nice to come back, be invited back to the uni and talk in this lovely room. So I'm just going to really mainly talk about my job and how I got there, and my role and the job's linked to citizenship. I think you guys, if you're doing a citizenship module, probably know more about citizenship and the details and the definitions of than I do, so I'm not going to bore you with Luke's thoughts on citizenship. So, partly because I don't really know much about it. So, I don't know, what have you learned so far, like, in your citizenship course? What does it mean? I mean, from my perspective, there's different types. Like, there's like legal definitions of citizenship, like people's have got their relationship with the state, like the right to vote, having passport, NI number. And then there's like local citizenship, which is linked to doing things in your community to make them better places to live. And global citizenship, which is quite hard to define and hard to relate to. Is that the kind of things you've been exploring in your course?
There's some people here, so we've got a mixture. We've got people from the Citizen Geographies module, but then these talks are open to outside as well, so, you know, a few people.
Essentially, I don't really have an answer to what citizenship is, but I'm going to just talk about my role and how I think it links in with it and my definition. So I wanted to start the presentation by just showing a really quick video of something. Just very quick, it's a minute long. And there's no real explanation at the moment. Just have a look. You might recognise it, it's in Contains. The beautiful capital city of Cardiff, represented in all its glory. Opposite this is a row of terraced housing. So this is what people who live on this street have to wake up to every day. Quite like the skull, actually. Generally, it's just crappy tagging, which you see a lot in Contains. This wall is 101 metres long. It just protects people from the train line. And it's just parallel to Salisbury Road. Do you know where Salisbury Road is in Contains? With like Greggs and Tesco's and Ramon's, Breckie Bar. It's a big long wall. So just keep that in the back of your head. So the plan for this evening is to talk how I got to where I am now, work for Severn Wye Energy Agency, particularly focusing on what I'm doing now, the background to the programme. It's called Cynefin, some of the projects we've been doing in the community, the future projects we have planned, and what I've learned and some final thoughts. Maybe we can have a cup of tea and some questions. So, brief story so far. I went to school, got an education, somehow managed to get to university. I don't know how, so I haven't figured that out. After I left university, I worked in Coleg Lanhafon. It's called Cardiff and Vale College. It's just a city college in Cardiff. And then I worked for 4 years at Cardiff Council in waste management department. Then I worked in London in the North London Waste Authority. And then now I'm currently working at Severn Wye Energy Agency. So yeah, part one, there's me. With black hair, dyed, of course. I failed most of my GCSEs. I really messed up my A-levels. I had lots of different jobs, just boring stuff, working in shops, bars, leafleting, paper round, etc., etc. Worked since I was 14. The reason why I put this on there really is just to show that you can kind of mess up and fail, but still succeed. And I think in our culture, we really try and hide failure a lot, but it's important and it shapes you as a person. So yeah, these were interesting years. There wasn't much education going on really. But things started to change a little bit. I went to uni in University of West of England in Bristol, studied history and politics because it sounded quite interesting. Started to focus a little bit more on my studies, about halfway through my undergrad, but still wasn't really that interested, more interested in partying. And I had 7 jobs as well, so I still worked throughout this period. Just doing like real kind of boring jobs, bar work, anything really, just to keep some money coming in. They're important, it was an important part of my career. Partly because, well, I needed money and I learned some skills along the way, some basic skills, but also because I realised that's what I didn't want to do in my life, was just work in these kind of dead-end jobs. They were fun nevertheless. And yeah, it was a good time. I had a really good time, as you can see. It was quite fun trying to find these photos and like kind of going back on Facebook. It's like, oh no, I hope my boss hasn't seen these. I then left uni and came back to Cardiff and worked in College London and Cardiff. So I supported students with learning difficulties and physical disabilities and the like. I had a kind of idea that I was going to be a teacher in an FE college. Seemed like a good plan. It seemed quite like a relaxing-ish place to work, not like a high school, in a city high school, which I think is quite scary at times. And yeah, but it didn't really work out for me, teaching. I liked it a lot, but I couldn't see a future in it. There wasn't many opportunities. There were people who had been teaching the subjects I wanted to teach for years, who weren't going anywhere. They had like 3 lecturers doing the jobs. So like, I just thought, you know what, this ain't gonna happen. But it was a good time, and I got to go to Washington and New York with where's the little my little friends. So that was cool, learned a lot there. I then left the college and worked for Cardiff Council. Worked in the recycling education department, so I thought, okay, go from education proper to just education in a waste-related way. It was a good move. Did lots of variety of different things. I think I had 4 different job titles. I worked in like 5 different offices. That's just the way of local government. I think my first job title was Research Recycling Coordinator, which sounds brilliant, but it wasn't as good as it sounded. Essentially, what I was doing was outreach work with going into schools, teaching the kids about recycling, teaching residents about changes in the system, recycling system in the city, blah blah blah. And then I went on to doing some research type things. So that is me dressed up to sift through rubbish, to essentially break open bin bags and separate everything and weigh it to see what the waste was composed of. All important stuff. I had to do other research things, like go through people's green bags. Like they would get a massive load of green bags from a certain area of the city, and we would separate it all out and see what was missing, like in terms of what we could recycle. It was horrible, really, that kind of stuff, but really important data. We did early morning monitoring, which was essentially walking around before the bin men and recording what people were putting out, what waste they were putting out, how many green bags or how many black bags, etc. Horrible work in the winter, but again, good data. I worked on projects, then I moved into projects, so I introduced battery recycling to the city, and saw an increase of battery recycling by about 140% in a year. It's really a good project. I did projects around increasing food waste, etc., etc. Worked with schools to try and introduce food waste collections there. I also worked on events like the RHS, where I am, the recycling zone. Before we started working on events, the RHS had a recycling rate of 6%, and when we went in there, we increased it to 87% in a year, which is pretty good figures, really. So it was a fun time in Cardiff Council. I was there for 4 years, really enjoyed it, but you know, all good things have to come to an end sometimes, and I needed a new challenge. Whilst I was there, though, I managed to convince the bosses to pay for me to do a master's, which was quite amazing thing, really. They said, yeah, get through it. It's 2.5 years of working full-time and studying. It's quite difficult, but we got there in the end. And there's some important things I got out of that course. It helped me gain a wider understanding of sustainable development, because when I was working in waste management, you just become kind of siloed in your thinking. So the whole world evolves around waste and recycling. People don't understand waste and recycling, they're idiots. And everyone, it should be the top of their list of things to do. Because that's just how it's set up, isn't it? Like, you're the waste person, you're the energy person, you're the biodiversity person, or whatever. So it's very much in that frame. And I just thought, do you know what? I'm not entirely sure whether I want to work in waste management for the rest of my life. So the sensible thing was to kind of retrain, I suppose, and get a qualification to go along with my practical experience. So yeah, the course, the SPEP course, is, what's your name? Alistair. He's currently doing SPEP. Is anyone else doing SPEP? Or? No. It's a really good course, isn't it? It provides you with a real good platform for understanding sustainable development and environmental policy. It's a really interesting course and great lecturers. I enjoyed it a lot. And there's a lot of people from around the world. I don't know who this still is, but it's quite like a multicultural course. So you have your ideas as a Welsh person or British person about the environmental policy stuff, and then you speak to somebody from China and it's slightly different, you speak to somebody from Spain and it's slightly different. So it was really good to kind of get out of thinking just the British way. It helped me get out of waste management. Well, not quite, but I did eventually. I'll talk about the job I had after the council in a sec, but when I was working there in North London Waste Authority, I was looking around the room at the people who I was working with, and they were all miserable. They were all earning good money, say £50,000 a year plus, something like that. It's London though, so it's good, but London's an expensive place to live. But they were miserable, a lot of them, but they couldn't leave their job, because if they did, then they probably wouldn't get a job with that same salary, and they might not be able to pay their mortgage or their loan on their car or whatever. So they were stuck. I thought, I don't want to be like them. I really don't. Also, encouraged me to think about myself and my impacts, my environmental impacts and things like that. And I went to a lecture by this woman called Mara, or no, I can't remember. What's her name? Yeah, the Italian lady. She was talking about meat and climate change. And after that, I went vegetarian for a year, just to see if I could do it, which I did, and it was fine. I survived, I'm still here, and but I did miss meat. But what happened was I changed my diet, so I eat less meat. I don't think eating meat is necessarily a bad thing. I think it's the amount people consume which is the problem, isn't it? So the course made me vegetarian in a way, or helped me on that road. Also, we had to do this module, I don't know if they still do it, called Sustainability in Practice, where we kind of had to keep a diary about how we try and incorporate sustainable development principles in our own lives. And I tried to start a project called Macintosh Community Chicken Cooperative. I wanted to have like a community chicken farm, I don't know, something small, 6 chickens or whatever, and people just had to feed the chickens and dig up the crap, and then they could have eggs as a reward. Nice idea. And so I was embarking on that. It was a real life project, and then I was recording like what I was going through, and a lot of the time it was just like barrier, and so you just have to try and break down those barriers. It didn't happen in the end because the landowners had told me to bugger off, and like, if you haven't got permission from the landowner, you can't do anything. But it was really interesting for what I'm doing now. Like, so again, cool. Thank you, masters. So then I moved to North London. Worked for Camden Council. They paid my wages, but I worked for this like Quango, I guess. It was a waste authority. It was public sector, but wasn't a council. I don't really understand it. 7 borough councils, maybe 2.5 million people. So nearly the population of Wales. And it sounded like a great job. It was good pay. Sounded like a good idea. Needed to get out of Cardiff, wanted to live in London, lived in Kentish Town, near Camden Town, so it was a pretty cool area. Yeah, it didn't really work out that well for me. It turned out the job was essentially just going around to lots of supermarkets, standing there, speaking to people about food waste, which is a very good and noble cause, to try and reduce food waste. But what I was doing, I was like, you know those people in supermarkets who give you tasters of cheese and things like that, or like new products? It's kind of like that, but just giving spaghetti measures out, and rice scoops and bits of information, and getting paid a lot of money to do it. It's ridiculous. I did do other projects. We gave away compost bins to people. Like, they actually gave them, just bought a load of compost bins and gave them away to people. We did, I did a junk mail reduction campaign, which is as dull as it sounds. And I worked on some stuff for free projects, which are essentially big swap shops. They were pretty good, and that experience was good because I've taken some of the ideas and used them in my job now. But generally, it wasn't a great time. It was good in a way because I finished my dissertation when I was there. I had quite a bit of time to think whilst I was stuck in Enfield Sainsbury's. And also, I have a bit of a legacy from this time. I went on NLW webpage, and I'm on the homepage. That's me. Look at that pity. So that's essentially what I was doing. Okay. I needed to get out of there. So after I finished my dissertation, it was like all guns blazing, applying for jobs. London, Bristol, Cardiff. As long as it was on the M4 corridor, I didn't mind. And luckily this one came up. It was a bit of a vague job description. It's something along the lines of working with communities in an urban setting to try and make their places more sustainable and better. Something along those lines, whatever that means, yeah. But I still applied for it, I was desperate. Severn Wye, yes, I worked for them. But as I was speaking to Justin earlier, and although I work for them, I'm a remote worker. They're based in Gloucester, their head office is in Gloucester, and they have another office in mid-Wales. My boss is based in mid-Wales. I see her maybe once or twice a month at best. I work in Cardiff. So although I work for Severn Wye Energy Agency, it's on a Welsh Government contract to deliver a programme. So Severn Wye is an energy agency, and their main aims are to look at kind of renewable energy solutions for businesses or governmental buildings, solar, EV and all that kind of stuff. And they also do programs to try and tackle fuel poverty, so like collective energy switching and things like that. It's a really good charity. And I'm not just saying that because they employ me. said, I don't really know much about the organisation, even though I've been working for them for 2 years. But it's run like a company, although it's a charity. And that's important because there's a lot of charities who run like charities, and I think they're a little bit disorganised. So yeah, been working there for 2 years now, and I'm working on a programme called Cynefin. Cynefin is Welsh word, I believe, I've been told. And I think it means habitat, or like place, like you have a connection to the place. It's Welsh Government funded, as a lot of things in this country are. All roads lead to Welsh Government. It's managed by Severn Wye, and it's hosted by Cardiff Council, so I have a desk in Cardiff Council, which is useful, because the local authority is quite, I don't know, Cardiff anyway, is big, it owns a lot of buildings, it's got lots of fingers and lots of pies, and there's lots of people who are the kind of gatekeeper to whether a project can be a success or not. So it's quite clever that they've placed us there, because it saves us time. You try emailing a council officer or phoning them and see how much response you get, whereas if you walk to their desk, they can't ignore you. Well, they can, but they don't tend to. So the aim of it, as I said before, is a little bit vague. Works with people to make areas better and more sustainable places to live. Now what does that mean? Really, it can mean anything, can it? Which is, it's a good thing and a bad thing. There's no blueprint to what we're doing. We couldn't learn from anyone really. But it also meant we had flexibility to adapt to the places we're working. There's 11 of us, I should add, doing this job. I'm the only one in Cardiff. There's one in Newport, Wrexham, Swansea, blah, 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 blah. Lots of different places. And each place is different, and that's the important thing to kind of recognise, isn't it? It's not one size fits all. It tries to connect people up. And remember I was talking about siloed working, like I'm wasting that. It's trying to look at a place and seeing what the kind of opportunities and challenges are in that place, and then bringing in a variety of different people to make that place better, instead of looking at like just sorting out waste, because there might, or just sorting out local environmental quality issues, because sometimes the answer to trying to solve those issues might not be a waste idea. It could be like an art idea or something else, or a transport project could link with waste somehow. Like there's connections between all these things. It's very difficult to see it unless you look at the kind of area holistically. And lastly, and most importantly, we've got to regularly feed back our successes and failures and any barriers we come up against to Welsh Government. Now, we do this on a monthly basis by sending reports back, and every 3 months we have a 2-hour phone conversation with a research consultancy, and they read our diaries or our reports and blah blah blah, and then they ask us questions on it to elaborate. Now, we won't see the benefit of that feedback. I probably would never see the benefit of it, because the changes in policy lag behind, like always. So maybe in three years or 5 years' time, they might have finally digested the information which we've given them and then changed their policy. But it's really important, because that's going to be the legacy of what we do, really. So I work in Cardiff. It's just me. I don't have any staff, and I don't have any money. Which is also, like, at first it's quite difficult, because when you work for a big organisation, although I never really had big budgets, there's the guy in comms or the transport guy who can lend a van, or there's the other person who can provide you with help and support in kind, I suppose. It's covered by the costs of running that organisation, but you don't have any of that. But the fact that we didn't have a budget is a really important thing, because, well, I'll come on to that in a sec. So I work in Cardiff. Do you live in Cardiff? Do you all live in Cardiff? So, you know this area. That's City Road there. That's Cruise Road. So, It covers parts of Plasnewydd, which is also known as Roath, but the council call it Plasnewydd for no apparent reason. Adamsdown and Cateys. Now, as you know, Cateys has got a large student population, average age 21, average age of this, like, average person, the age of the average person living in Cardiff is 36, but in Cateys is 21, so it's like the youngest, which probably explains a lot if you ever walk around Cateys, you see how much of a shithole it is. Plasnewydd / Roath is a bit mixed. You've got a lot of students kind of living up there, mixed bag of people living there. This part is quite wealthy, so as it is by the park. Difficult to characterise really. There's young people, old people, families, young professionals, rich people, poor people, blah blah. Adamsdown, which is where I grew up, is an economically deprived area. It's in the top 10% of most deprived areas in Wales. And so there's a lot of kind of deprivation and social issues here. One thing which ties them together really, I suppose, is they're quite transient areas. So like Cateys, some parts of Cateys were here. I love this clicker. Some parts of Cateys have got 90% rented accommodation. So like every 9 months people moving in and out. So how do you kind of create a sustainable community when that happens? Almost impossible. And yeah, here's a lot of social housing, and here's mixture of stuff. So yeah, 20,000 people live in that kind of bluey area, more or less. 25,000 people. Most densely populated area in Wales. So challenges. Okay. So, faced with this challenge, this is what the journey I've gone through really to try and do something. It's a blank canvas, really. So I spent a few months investigating the place, which is why I can reel off some of those stats. Spent time looking at census statistics and crime statistics and the like. They only tell a certain story, don't they? They don't really tell any human story. It's just like, there's this amount of people living there. But spend the time talking to residents and community groups and stakeholders who work in the community. So that took a couple of months, 3 months. Then I got those professional stakeholders in a room and said, look, here I am. I'm here, I'm on the scene. Like, you're going to need to work with me. We don't need to, but it would be nice if you did. After that, I held a visioning event, which essentially means like a consultation, public consultation. But we did it in a way where we spent 2.5 hours, invited residents to the Gate Art Centre in Plasnewydd. We spent 2.5 hours talking about the challenges and the risks and the opportunities in terms of making the area better. Like what things, what ideas could there be to make this area better? Got some really good food in, we had a really good conversation. So it was quite in-depth consultation, as opposed to just standing there on the street, like doing a 5-minute survey. It was really good, really successful. 70 people came, which is good for, if I could have 70 people here, I'd be very, we should have got some food in, that would it. After that, I analysed all the information, and there was like lots of things coming out, like this area is dirty, this area's got loads of graffiti here. We want to see like more street art. We want to have more growing spaces. Blah 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 blah. And I categorised them into themes, and then I held an event where I invited professionals who were linked to those themes, sit around the table and have a 2.5-hour discussion, saying, how can you support this community? This is what the community is saying. How can you support them? Is there something on the horizon which is going to happen and I should be aware of? Is there something which you're planning and I'm planning? Like, can we avoid duplication? Stuff like that. And to get buy-in from people, get buy-in for what you're trying to do. There are a load of ideas dropped out of that as well. So at this point, I'm faced with like 50 ideas from the visioning event and another 60 ideas from the next event with the professionals. I'm thinking, oh God, I've only got 6 months left, because originally it was only a year programme, and they extended it to 3. I've got 6 months left to try and deliver 150 project ideas, and it was stressing me out. Like, I had this massive sty just appeared. I've never had a sty in my life. So I needed to try and prioritise some project ideas, because some of them are like pie in the sky, some of them are great, some of them are boring or whatever. So essentially, I held 5 project workshops where I invited the professionals and the residents around those themes to prioritise the projects. So it was like, say, 10 per theme, or whatever. Prioritise 2 of them. Then we planned the project, we applied for money to deliver them, blah, blah, blah. We delivered them, we celebrated, and then we went back to the community and said, right, this is what we've done. Now you know what we can do together, what we can do together. Let's try and aim a bit higher, and let's do some more projects. I'll talk about that again in a second. So, quite a long process, but really important. So what do we do? Okay, this was one of the first projects which we did. People felt that it's important to try and, because the area is so transient, it's important to try and highlight the community assets to people, to new residents. So you just arrive in the Tays or Roath. Like, where's the library? Where's the park? Where's the sports centre? Or whatever. So, have you seen any of these? Have you? Oh, cool. That's nice to know. Because you never know when you put these things in, unless you stand there for like a week, like analysing people looking at the sign. They might not even be looking at the sign. This one? Yeah. And Salisbury Square, that's what it's called now. Salisbury Square. But how we did this was, there was a bit of money in the council to do a waymarking project, but they didn't really know like what that was going to look like or anything really. They wanted it to be in Tays and Roath, which is quite convenient. So this is what dropped out of the meeting with the professionals. Oh, by the way, we've got this bit of money. Do you want to work with us on that? So yeah, but if we're going to work on it, we're going to work with the community, and they're going to decide all the details. So the community got to decide what the signpost looked like. Out of choice, they voted. We fancied this one. The community got to decide what their assets were, or almost like voting, and the highest amount of votes got put on a sign, more or less, within these. And there was rules, like, can't be a business, can't be something which might close down in 6 months. But other than that, it was fair game for anything. I mean, some people said, oh, that alleyway, that cut-through alleyway on City Road, that should be on a sign. And it's like, really? Really? Can't do that. Oh, I forgot to say, the other important thing was to have the walking time in minutes, not just, say, 500 kilometres, or what, not 500 kilometres, 500 metres. Because, how long does that take? I don't know. How long does it take to walk 500 metres? I have no idea. So we put walking times. And they had to be almost within a 10-minute walking radius of the sign. Any longer, people won't bother. Other than the city centre, which was on every single sign, because you can orientate yourself then, can't you? Like, oh, the city centre's that way. Blah, blah, blah. So people got to decide what the lampposts looked like, signposts. They got to decide where they were pointing to, and they got to decide where they went. Why can't people decide these things? Like, it's not that dangerous to let go a bit of power or decision-making power, is it? Why can't they decide? It's only a sign. Like, given the framework, given the rules of the game, and then let them decide. And often they make better decisions, I think. Citizenship? Maybe. People felt that the community was really disconnected, because it's so transient. Felt it was really disconnected. And they wanted to see some sort of activity which brought people together. And we felt collectively that food was something which was a real strong point in the area. There's loads of kebabis and loads of Kentucky Fried Chicken places, but there's also some really quality food from around the world on City Road and around. So celebrate the assets, yeah? And we thought, let's have a little food festival. So instead of explaining it, because you're probably falling asleep listening to my dull voice, somebody made the video of it, free. Somebody in the community made the video of the whole festival, and it's brilliant. I think it captures it really well. So if you don't mind, we'll just show that. Which is where the good music was coming from earlier.
My name's Lou Price. I'm working on a Welsh Government-funded programme called Connecting, and the whole point of the programme is about working with people to make things happen, working with residents to make things happen, to make their areas better, and then like any barriers, reporting them back to the powers and see if it can make it easier in the future. You need to work with the people who live in the area and say, like, you know, what do you want in this area? What do you need? What do you think will work? And then work towards that. So it's a shared vision, shared community vision. And then you just try and help it happen. You need that desire.
My name's Becca, and I run Green City Events, which is a social enterprise. We brought together different local food providers, different community groups, service providers, volunteers from the community gardens. It's what I want for Green City. I want to help people do the small things in their everyday lives that make a difference to them and to their community. People don't always think about the small things they do making a difference, but if everyone's doing these little things, it's making a bigger difference in the world.
It was lovely. Happy day, lots of nice people around. Then you can see bombs with kids, sun smiles, and then we'll get really messy and enjoying it. So you can just throw your seed bombs in the garden or in the hedge, put some water on them, and they'll grow. We ran a Lebanese restaurant called Mesaluna, just down the road. We ran out of food a few times on a few occasions, so we had to go back to actually make some more. Absolutely amazing.
It's been fantastic weather today. We've given so much chocolate, getting people to try some unrefined sugar and dairy-free vegan chocolate. It's absolutely fantastic, yeah. It's a really good turnout, really good Cardiff mix. Oh, it was so much fun. We'll come back again next year, yeah.
We've asked the stallholders to sell small taste portions of their food so they can be really accessible to the community. So instead of having to spend like £5 on one whole dish, they've gone around and spent £1, a couple of quid in each different stall and tasted all the different food that's on offer. That's been a massive success.
We used to be community worker for these very estate ones, and it was pretty hard to get anything up off the ground in those days, but now it's just lovely to see the lovely sunny day and thousands of people out here enjoying themselves and getting into all food. And what's amazing is that you've got this fantastic young band called Junior Bill and the Scallies coming here this afternoon.
This food festival is just a really good opportunity to bring people together in this community because people love food. It's a real good hook. One of the key things I would like to see happen is the amount of food stalls expanding to really represent the cultural diversity of Pasmere and Roath.
So, it was a great day. It really was. And I just coordinated it, you know. Everyone else came along and took part, and it was great. It was really successful. Got loads of different people from the community out and talking to each other. So yeah, it was cool. It was really fun. We held a thing called Exchange in Roath, giant swap shop. Remember I was talking about North London Waste Authority, and they did these things stuff for free? We just adapted it and did a similar one in Cardiff. And we had 1.3 tons of stuff bought from the local community in 5 days, and 800 people came through the door, and 75% of it was taken in 4 hours. It was amazing. It was insane. Like, we're going to do it again, but next year, or this year, we'll need to have some sort of air conditioning unit because it was hot and stuffy and chaotic. But great. Redistribution of things. I can answer more, I can talk about these projects a little bit more afterwards if you want. This one was done with the Environmental Champions. Don't know if any of you have heard them. They are a student volunteer organisation. And they're doing work now, currently, here in Cardiff, in Cathays. Took a group of them out, did a series of surveys using Keep Wales Tidy methodology, where we surveyed the cleanliness of the streets, the 12 streets behind the Union. Do you know some of them?
I know, we're trying to work out where in Cathays that was.
That's by Salisbury Square.
Yeah.
Because people say Cathays is dirty, it's messy, it's horrible, but unless you've got evidence to back it up, it's really difficult to, like, for decision makers to act on it. So we went out and surveyed the streets twice, and we got really solid evidence that the areas were rubbish, really, really awful, and not really fit for a capital city. And we had discussions with the decision makers to try and come up with solutions. But they weren't really that interested in that. But at least it got the debate going. Project Dyke Stand. Project Dyke Stand. That's a recent one. Similar to the waymarking project, we had a bit of money to install some bike stands in Cathays and Roath. But why should I decide where they go? Why should a transport officer decide where they go? Why can't people who use the system decide where they go? Let's have a look where the gaps are. Believe it or not, there's no bike stands outside Cardiff Students' Union. It must be the only students' union in the country without a place to park your bike. So people said, we need some bike stands here, we need some bike stands outside the union, outside the Woody pub, outside the community centre. And we got some money, and people that were involved in the decision-making process, and it made the project more round and more fulfilling and more successful. And people are using the bike stands. That was done through with the Student Environmental Champions as well. People wanted to see growing spaces, so we got some planters from the council, and we made a herb garden where people can walk past down Albany Road and pick the herbs, take them home and put them in their meal. Low cost. The most expensive part was the sign. Got a local artist to design the sign. Pick it, wash it, eat it. It was a couple £100. People were retweeting about it in New York and Denver and throughout the UK. It was probably that had the project for them was the widest reach, the smallest project as well. Okay. Remember that video we saw at the beginning? Looks a bit better now, don't you think? Lots of people were involved in that project. It took 10 months to plan and deliver. But it's just a wall, isn't it, with paint. But it's changed their area. Those people who wake up in the morning now see art. They don't see tagging. Has been tagged since, but we covered it with anti-graffiti solution. So we just wiped it off with water. Screw you, taggers. So, after all those projects were completed, I felt it was really important to celebrate the success with the community and the people who had taken part. Something which is often overlooked, but incredibly valuable. We also had a year and a half left on my contract, so let's plan for my time here. How can we make best use of it? So I've got the people who are involved in the projects to speak and talk about it. Not me, them. They're involved, they take ownership of it. Also got some quality food. Now, if you ever do community work, good food brings people through the door. It does. It's guaranteed. That was provided by Meze Luna, who were at the food festival. So, what's happened so far? We did some love, food, hate, waste. Nearly haunted me, but we got some money to do some love, food, hate, waste work. I was there with my spaghetti measurer. We could barely do it, but we got through it. We did some cookery lessons, we did some road shows, we did one in the Students' Union yesterday or the day before. Had a pedal-powered smoothie maker and some banana cake and things, and people could talk about the issues. That was very, very successful. Got some more bike stands in. These are weird ones, these are loopy ones. So, when you park your bike up, you know it's better to use the 2D locks and the ropey thing, so you can do it better on that than you can do it with the lamppost. There's a couple of them at Salisbury Road, Wellfield Road, and we've got to put a few more in. That's on its way. What's planned? Food Festival number 2. This is what dropped out of the revisioning event. People wanted to see another food festival. Why not? Repeat success. People want to see an outdoor pedal-powered international community film festival. So we're going to do an outdoor international pedal-powered community film festival. If we get the money. We're going to do another exchange. We're going to do some more growing projects. Hopefully we're going to do some green space improvement around the back of the Students' Union by the Shermans. And more public art. That's what people want. Here's Luke's top tips for success in your career. Just my opinion. I don't know, I just thought I had to get it in there somewhere. But a lot of people, especially people who've gone through like academia, are scared to get their hands dirty, scared to leave their desk or the office. But it can get you lots of respect. Just get stuck in. Don't chase the money. I went to London, partly because I wanted to live in London, partly because I wanted to leave the council, and partly because it was a really good salary. It backfired, and I was miserable when I worked there. It's really important to do something which, you need money, but it's not the most important thing. Doing something which makes you feel happy. Well, it's cliche, but it's true. Relationships are really important, not just in your career, in life as well. But they're really important, so you never know when somebody's can help you. Like, you might not know what they do, and then you might ignore them, or you might, I don't know, be nasty to them in an email, or whatever. And then when you actually need them to work with you, they won't work with you. So it's really important to maintain good relationships, professional relationships. It's easy sometimes to forget when you're working, that boundary between like a private life and your professional life. Challenge authority. Your bosses aren't always right, but your people, they make mistakes. If you think they're doing something wrong or not for the right reasons, challenge them, because they probably are. Just because they're your boss. Do the basics right. This is what I put in there because I think it's really important as well. Like, turn up on time, do your admin, and your bosses won't bug you. Keep their life easy, and your life will be easier. Break the rules. Some rules are important, some rules aren't. Some rules are stupid. So if they are, break them. as long as you're not going do like a mental risk assessment first. If somebody's going to hurt themselves, or if it's going to damage the environment or something like that, don't break them. But if you think that it's probably all right, just break them. Change your job roles regularly. Keep refreshing yourself. Keep your mind active. Copy successful ideas. Why not? Like, how many new ideas are there? I know there probably are some, but if it's a successful idea, just adapt it to your job or your role and your place, and do it your way. Stick to your values, and just take loads of tea breaks, chill out a bit, it's only work. Oh, yeah, I tried this in right at the end, because I thought, yeah, it's a citizenship module, isn't it? We've got to link it into citizenship. And I suppose a lot of my work is local citizenship, isn't it, really? It's not to do with that kind of legal definition. It's not really global citizenship. Although I did get retweeted in New York. Yeah. Working with people to shape and deliver projects. That's local citizenship, isn't it? Doing it honestly. Local authorities, sometimes they'll say they're doing consultation or working with the community, but often they don't because it's hard. So they just do it themselves. But as we've shown, when people organise themselves and when people are involved, and I think actually what I'm saying is going to result in something, the projects are often delivered in a more effective way. It's really powerful to see this happening, and people in power find this scary, which is probably why they don't do it, partly. And engaged and active citizens can create stronger and more resilient communities. In the area I work, like, community is quite fragile, and I think a lot of people share that. Like, I don't know what's happened. Maybe it's something to do with Thatcher. I don't know. I blame her for most things, so I'm guessing so. But there's been a breakdown in community over the last 30, 40 years. But strong communities are resilient, and so engaging with citizens is like really important, and them thinking they can have an impact in their own environment. I'm finished. Is that 45 minutes?
You were probably a bit more, Luke.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Thank you, Luke. What I suggest we do is just take a quick break.